Fed president from the Minneapolis Fed President Neel Kashkari is actually going to be in Montana tomorrow. But he joins us live right now, right here on Montana Talks. Mr. Kashkari, an honor to have you on the show this morning. Thanks for taking some time out for us.
Thanks for having me, and please call me Neel.
All right, will do. So, I know you're making a trip to Montana tomorrow, and you're going to be meeting with some business leaders in the state, meeting with some tribal leaders, others in the state, kind of to hear more about Montana's economy. It's been pretty remarkable to watch. We've seen kind of the Trump bump in revenues, even in our state budget. We've got low unemployment numbers. I mean, our economy has just been rolling along here. What have you heard so far, and what are you hoping to hear tomorrow?
Well, I think that's true around the region. Overall, the economy is doing well. Wages are picking up slowly. Workers are finding jobs. That's all good news. We are hearing in the ag sector, farmers have been under pressure for a number of years with low prices. And I hear from a lot of farmers that they're concerned that low prices are continuing. They're also concerned about trade negotiations and markets that may not be open to them. So that's an area of focus. I want to hear more how the ag sector in Montana is doing, but how the other sectors are doing well. So I think right now, overall, the economy is doing well. There's some nervousness out there. There's signs that Germany is slowing and China is slowing, and what does that mean for our exporters? So I'm anxious to hear how folks in Montana feel like they're doing and what their view is for the future.
Well, and I know on that trade front, I know a lot of us back here are kind of scratching our heads. You've got this U.S. Mexico-Canada agreement that's just sitting on the desks of politicians back on Capitol Hill. It just seems like, why can't they just get that done? How impactful could something like that be if they get that across the finish line?
Well, I think that'll be a really important step forward because our most important trading partners are Canada and Mexico, and we need to make sure that that relationship is smooth and that our businesses can do business in those countries seamlessly. So I think if that gets passed and enacted, that'll be a really positive step forward for the U.S. economy and for our economic competitiveness, and I think it'll be a sign of confidence that our political system in Washington can get stuff done.
What you hear a lot of talk, and in fact, some people, it almost sounds like they want a recession to come. They're cheerleading a recession because they want it to impact the 2020 elections. But I guess, what's your take? Do you feel like we're headed in the right direction, or is there concern out there?
It's mixed. So right now, the U.S. consumers make up about 70% of the economy. People buying food for their families, buying clothes, buying cars. Consumers are doing well. People have jobs. Wages are slowly picking up. That's all really good news. On the business front, it's more mixed. The data nationally shows that businesses are more hesitant to invest because they're nervous about the global environment, and exporters are suffering because of some of these trade frictions. And then we look at this thing in the bond market. You might hear about it called the yield curve, which is the rate that the government spends, the interest rate that they pay to borrow money. It's showing some warning signs. So right now, I think the fundamentals are still good, but there are some warning signs out there that we do need to pay attention to.
Minneapolis Fed President Neel Kashkari in Montana tomorrow, but joining us right now live right here on Montana Talks. In fact, actually tomorrow afternoon at the Petro Theater at Montana State University Billings, Stockman Bank CEO and Minneapolis Fed Helena Branch Director Bill Coffey is going to serve as moderator. So Bill Coffey, just a great guy. Stockman Bank, one of the things I love about Bill Coffey, too, is he gets out there and he travels across Montana and just has his ear to the ground with what's going on in our economy, and likes to meet folks out on the ranch, likes to meet folks at your business to find out what's happening out there in the economy. And Fed President Kashkari, sounds like that's a little bit of what you're doing tomorrow in Montana.
That's right. We've got a whole day of meetings set up with tribal leaders, with business leaders, with other civic leaders, and then we're having the town hall at noon at the university when everybody's invited. These are a great opportunity for me to hear from everybody, from workers, from business leaders, from your neighbors, just to hear what's happening in the Montana economy, how are things going, what's happening in the job market, what's happening in wages. I go to Washington, D.C. every 6 weeks where we set interest rates for the country. And a big part of my job is to represent this region, including Montana, to be able to speak intelligently about what's happening in the local economy. So the more people come out on Thursday, the more they ask questions, the more they offer comments, the smarter I'm going to be. So I really hope people will turn out.
Well, and speaking of interest rates, I know my wife Jessica's in the real estate business, so we're very thankful about the reduction in the interest rates. But I think we're not alone too. I know others have been appreciative of those moves as well. What's been the toughest question facing the Minneapolis Fed and especially the Helena branch area here in our neck of the woods?
Well, I think for all of us, the biggest question we've been wrestling with is, are there more workers out there? You know, for the last 2 or 3 years, businesses have been complaining they just can't find workers. There's a worker shortage. And I've always said back to businesses, are you paying more? If you pay more, they will come. And we're finally seeing wages growing a little bit, but they're not taking off. I mean, we are seeing some wage growth. But as wages have picked up a little bit, people have come off the sidelines. You know, people who said, no, I'm not looking for a job, I'm retired, I'm going to stay at home, they're seeing wages pick up and they're saying, you know what, I'm going to go get that job. So the big question that I'm wrestling with is, are there more people out there who could work, who will work, if wages continue to pick up?
That's a good point, too. And I know especially folks who are retired, maybe they're on Social Security, but they still want to work. But kind of there's some limitations. If they work too much, make a little too much, then they lose some of their other benefits. I wonder if there's some other things that we can do in policy and in our economy that might help ease this labor shortage that we got. Because, I hear it from folks all across Montana, you know, and they're just struggling to find people to fill the jobs that are available right now in this Trump economy that we've got going.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, I think there is a lot of analysis on some of the benefit programs. If they create disincentives to work, or the wages have to be much, much higher to bring folks back in. So I think that you're right, that there are tweaks that could be made to help bring people back into the labor force. Because the more people we have working, it's good for them, it's good for our communities, it's good for the country.
I talked a little bit about your background being an aerospace engineer, you know, developing technology for NASA, but then switching into finance, you know, the Wharton School, Goldman Sachs, Treasury Department, you name it. At one point, you also ran for governor of California. I don't know why you'd want to take over that mess down there. Talk about troubled assets in California. But what's it like being a Fed president? Because I know, I had a great opportunity to work for Bloomberg TV a little bit in Washington, D.C., and, you know, they basically said, anytime you see a Fed president, anyone like that, you know, record everything, because anything they say could move the markets instantly. What's it like where the markets can react so quickly to what you say at any moment?
Well, we have to be very careful about then what we say, just because people are paying attention. And I like to be more blunt. I like to be just kind of plain spoken, and not everybody appreciates that. And sometimes I say things and people may misinterpret it. So I think we have to be more careful. But it's fun being a regional bank president. So my region is Montana, North and South Dakota, Minnesota, part of Michigan, and part of Wisconsin. So I spend a lot of my time traveling around the region, hearing directly from folks on the ground what's happening in the region, what's happening in their local communities, and that's really fun for me. And then I can bring that back to Washington, D.C., and hopefully help us make better decisions. You know, I've been an outlier for the last 2.5 years arguing against raising interest rates, just because I didn't see any evidence that the U.S. economy was overheating. And I think that my colleagues now have started to take a similar view, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, 30 seconds to go with Minneapolis Fed President Neel Kashkari. What are you most excited about heading into 2020?
You know, I'm most excited about something we talked about, which is the job market. I think that we're seeing huge benefits to the country by putting people back to work. We're seeing, you know, we talk about gaps between different races and how many jobs they can find. We're seeing those gaps start to close because the job market is strong, and I want to keep the job market as strong as we can for as long as we can.
All right, Minneapolis Fed President Neel Kashkari, thanks for joining us here on Montana Talks. Great to chat with you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, don't let Bill Coffey give you too hard of a time tomorrow.
He's a good guy.